Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome back, and welcome to the new faces. So what I'm going to do is, since we've had 30 days, right, of break, so the best way to go about this is to bring you back up to speed. That is what we've done so far, the summary of Chapter 2, summary of Chapter 3, Chapter 4, and Chapter 5, Sannyasa Yoga. That means the yoga of true renunciation. Right? So we were discussing what is true renunciation and what is not true renunciation, having that clear distinction. So in order to do this, I'm going to cover, because you need to know what Chapter 5 is. Chapter 5, right, is a very short chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. However, Krishna summarizes Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, and the entire Vedas, the message of the Vedas in Chapter 5. Right? So this is what I want to provide to you now. It's going to be a rather bird's eye view of 2, 3, 4, and 5 itself. And then from then on, we can continue on to the details, to the thorough depth from next week. Okay? So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so Chapter 5 is divided into 4 sections. That's where we are at now, the Bhagavad Gita. The first section is Krishna talks about 2 lifestyles, right? Nishta Dvayam, 2 lifestyles. Section 2 of Chapter 5, because Chapter 5 has 4 sections, talks about 2 types of spiritual sadhana. Okay? So, part 1, 2 types of lifestyle. Part 2, 2 types of spiritual sadhana, sadhana dvayam. Part 3 of Chapter 5 talks about the benefit of following sadhana dvayam. That is the benefit of following one or both of the sadhanas. Okay, so what's the benefit? Why benefit? Because the mind likes to know. Why should I? There's always that question that we need to fill. That is, why should I do this? If there's no reason, then there's no motivation to progress. We know this from our experience, right? So we need to have a reason. And finally, the last section of Chapter 5 talks about, is actually 3 verses, verse 27 to 29, is a preparation to meditation, Jnana Yoga, Chapter 6. Okay, so just 3 verses at the end. So right now, from the last year, we're continuing into sadhana dvayam. That is the 2 spiritual practices. Before we get to that, I want to talk about the 2 types of lifestyle. Listen very carefully, because this is going to provide the overview of the entire Gita of Chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of the Vedas as to how to live this and how not to live this. First section, 2 lifestyles. Grihastashrama, that is grihasta. Grihasta means householder. Okay? So grihasta ashrama and sannyasa ashrama. So what is grihasta ashrama, right? What is a lifestyle of a householder? What does a lifestyle of a householder look like? That's a fair question. The householder lifestyle is one which is active. What does this mean? It means that it's involved in worldly pursuits, aspirations, teaching, right? Working, wife, husband, children. There are possessions in life. So that is a lifestyle of a householder. Understand? That means a householder is active in life. The second lifestyle is sannyasa ashrama. That is a lifestyle of a sannyasi, or a renunciate, or a monk. Now, what is a sannyasa ashrama look like? It is a lifestyle where one does not have possessions and is generally not related or associated to the society. So what does this mean? Life of seclusion. Why? For the purpose of liberation. That's the only reason for both Grihastha ashrama and Sannyasa ashrama. So what's the reason for both ashramas? Liberation. That's the only reason. So they have a difference. You understand now? One is active and one is removed from the society. Okay. Also, chapter 3, verse 3 talks about and mentions, also Krishna mentions these two lifestyles, and he says, Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nakha. So he's also mentioning these two lifestyles in chapter 3, verse 3, and they're being reintroduced back in chapter 5. Now, I know what you're asking. Can you please talk more about these lifestyles? We will. I'm giving you a bird's eye view. Now, from chapter 5, right, the beginning verse of chapter 5 in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna has a confusion. That's where Arjuna is confused. And what is Arjuna confused about? Whether, listen carefully, whether sannyasa ashrama is required for liberation. That's Arjuna's confusion. That's a fair question. So that means if we ever ask ourselves, do I need to renounce the world? Do I need to be away from the world in order to recognize the nature of the I, the true nature of the I? Do I?
No. Yes and no.
Yes and no, that's good. It's always a safe one. Krishna replies that sannyasa ashrama is not compulsory for liberation. In other words, removing oneself away from the world and being active in the world, now here's the important point, is entirely your decision. You understand? This is one area in life where one has to decide, am I either a sannyasi or am I a householder? Until you decide, there will be a constant mind tug of war, because when things get tough in the world, we're going to be thinking about maybe, after all, sannyasi is better. If a sannyasi, right, has a moment of lack of possession, lack of food, then they're going to be thinking, maybe it was better that I had stayed as a householder. That means once you decide to either be a householder, grihastha or a sannyasi, stay with that decision and there is no going back. The sooner we choose these two lifestyles, the quicker the agitations fall away, because there is nothing more disturbing than just this foundational principle of what life should I be living. Until that is resolved, there will be agitations coming and going based on the circumstances of life. You understand? Now, both have pluses and minuses, disadvantage and advantage. That's obvious. For example, for a grihastha ashrama, for a householder, the advantage, the plus point, is money and people, which give seeming sense of security. Now, I put seeming word in there intentionally, because whether they actually give security or not that is a different debate, right?
Like a measure, it doesn't.
Right, but see, we're not interested whether it does or it doesn't. So I just put seeming, so that's up to you. We're not interested in now debating whether it really does or it doesn't. So the plus point of a grihastha ashram, of a householder, is possessions, money. Therefore, the primary human need called security is satisfied. And because of the security, one, by that nature, is able to rest and find the time without worrying about money or security alone and study the scriptures. So that means a householder in this arena is a massive advantage. Because it is impossible to study the scriptures or come to class or be interested in the truth if I'm worried about where I'm going to, if I'm fired or how I'm going to make my money or how I'm going to pay for the bills. Right? It's impossible. So that means the lower desires always take precedence. If you know the Maslow hierarchy of needs, you will know that security, survival is at the bottom, and only once the survival is taken care of, only then does one start to instigate, inquire into something other than survival, which is how to better myself as a human being. Okay, so that's the plus point, security, seeming security. This point is minus for who? Sannyasa. Right. Why? Because the sannyasa is dependent on where they're going to get the food, or living, or how they're going to, go for the next 10 years in this place wherever one is located. So you can see the plus and the minuses. It's with everything. It's not just with these two lifestyles. They say actually that a sannyasi or a monk shaves the head so that you can't catch them by the hair, right? So you can't, they're always slip because they're free. They're free from the moral duties of the world.
Not the Indian sannyasis though.
Huh?
Not the Indian ones. Indian ones have long hair, long beard.
Yeah, they don't shave their head. Yeah, this is a monk because a sannyasi is also a monk. So the plus point for a grihastha ashrama, for a householder, is, as we said, security. The minus point, which is for a sannyasa. The minus point for a householder is responsibility. You know what comes with responsibility, right? Duty, concern, anxiety, worry, burden. For example, let's say I have children, and my children are not getting married. And because they're my children, by the nature of a householder, I own things, right? That's what a householder possesses things. So there's a myness, there's a sense of my there. Because there's an attachment to me and that object, the condition of that object directly affects the condition of my own mind. So if the children are not getting married, I get agitated. So that's the negative or the minus point of a householder. Now, depending on how the agitation is managed, that is up to you. Understand? So it's not necessarily a minus point. It depends how you look at it. This is a plus point for a sannyasi. Why? Because a sannyasi has no moral obligations, has no societal expectations, has no need to fulfill any duties, thus is free to inquire 24/7 or contemplate or meditate or pursue a life purpose. So once again, we draw the line. Grihastha ashrama and sannyasi. Both have pluses and minuses. The message is you need to decide which one am I. So this is where Arjuna naturally is going to ask what? Oh Krishna, which is better? Right? Krishna is the Lord. So if you could speak to the Lord right now and you ask, Lord, which is better? Like you've offered me these two lifestyles, which is better? The Lord says, Krishna says, both are okay. However, grihastha ashrama life of a householder is better or more appropriate for most. Why? Because think about human relationships, right? And people and security. They do what? They provide sanity to our own minds. Isn't that what relationships do in general societal conditions? They provide us mental sanity. And not everyone is primed for sannyasi, because sannyasi is completely away from the world and they are entirely only interested in the truth. Not everyone is completely primed for that kind of predisposition or character. Therefore, Krishna says, for most people, at all times, including the Satya Yuga and the Kali Yuga, is a householder lifestyle. In fact, before sannyasis came, right? Okay, first of all, why is sannyasi present? Because especially when the Kali Yuga started coming, we needed to have a devoted practice just for truth. During the Satya Yuga, this was much easier because truth was prevalent everywhere. So as the Raja Yuga started to come and agriculture started to take place and people started to farm and trade and have commerce with each other, then more attention went into material and less attention went into the spiritual. Therefore, for that reason, a new lifestyle had to be put more importance, which is sannyasi. The point being, number one, you need to choose, the sooner the better, and stick with it. And number two, Krishna says, the Lord says, for most of us, the householder is better. Okay. So that was part 1 of chapter 5. 2 lifestyles. Okay? Questions?
Yeah, if there's a resolution of the tension that you spoke about between those two things,
good.
Is it possible that those can? I mean, I understand what's written in the scriptures, but
yeah.
On a practical sense, can we integrate the qualities of a monk into living as a householder?
Yeah, so it's, okay, see, today it's a good point you bring up. It is not entirely appropriate to shave the head, right? We're talking now about hundreds of years ago. That was a lot more appropriate than it is today, right? So especially in the Western world, in Australia, for example, or Europe or America, maybe it's a little bit easier in India, but especially today, you could say that there is a fine line between a householder and a sannyasi. What do I mean by a fine line, right? That means simplifying life to bring it closer towards a sannyasi while still having basic needs met. So what does this mean? That means having less interest in, let's say, those which will otherwise cause me to constantly, interact with and, have my contemplations about, and more into the scripture. So that means simplify life. You understand? That's the fine line, the balance. So are we clear what simplify life means? It means, in summary, still having what you have, the primary possessions, but just removing those circumstances which otherwise would deter me or detract me or distract me from my full involvement in contemplating and reading and listening to Shruti.
Is that similar to a life of an Indian Brahmin priest? Like he's still a householder and yet he's a priest 24 hours. Like he contemplates on Vedanta and...
Yeah, that's also a fine line. Yeah, that's also a fine line. That's also in between. The life is, for example, householders. My teacher Nima and James are both householders, right? But their life is extremely simple. All they do is just teach Vedanta. In other words, contemplate the truth all day because they're teaching it. So that's the fine line. So yeah, also the priest could also fit in the same category.
Is that what it's pointing towards? To be completely immersed in the scriptures?
Yeah.
It's almost like trying to tip the scales more towards scriptures,
Yeah.
and do as little as you possibly can with the material world.
Yeah, that's right. Not that it's forceful. We're not talking, by the way, we're not talking about suppression. We're talking about sublimation. So what's the difference between suppression and sublimation? So let's take a suppression attitude. Suppression attitude means I see the intellectual value in the scriptures, and I like what I see. And as a mandate, I follow instructions without knowing why I'm following those instructions. In other words, there's no reason to back me up, right? So that means suppression is uneducated, I must. Meanwhile, sublimation is I see the intellectual value in the scriptures, I like the scriptures, and I know why I want to pursue the scriptures. Why? For liberation. For example, a school kid, right, sublimates by wanting to have good marks. That's the vision. That means the vision is good marks in class. And by that vision, automatically the kid's not going to watch the movies. That's sublimation. So sublimation is having vision, but having reason for the vision. Suppression is having vision, because I'm told to have the vision, but having no proper reason to have that vision. Understand? Suppression versus sublimation. We see this in the churches. I'm not going to call the names, but we see where good people, right? They're serving society, and then suddenly one day they do something crazy that's unacceptable. And you say, why did they do that? Well, because there was this pressure being built up. Suppression, 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 without having proper values or proper vision to see. No reason. So one day they just blow up emotionally, because emotion always tips the scale and takes over the intellect. So therefore that viveka, discrimination, can no longer function. And then the person blows up. So therefore that viveka, discrimination of the vision, has to be constant. And you have to have reason why.
I've got a question. How do you discipline yourself from this kind of distraction, the maya, the sort of worldly is there? How do you get yourself disciplined?
Yeah, it's very slow, actually. You know, it starts off extremely slow. So let's take a common scenario. So here's an innocent person, and they just happen to have hear about the truth. And they don't know what the truth is. They're not quite clear about the truth. But they're interested, right? There's something about them that wants to cause them to delve deeper into that. But there's what? A whole bunch of interests about the world. That's the usual case scenario. So what happens is little by little, they start to attend or read or just contemplate and think about it, and then put it away, and then back into the world. And then again, contemplate, read about it, maybe talk about it, and then go back to the world. So what happens is, at the beginning, there's a huge tendency for the material, for the world of matter, right? And at the end is a very small interest for the spiritual. So the more you start placing your attention, the more that spiritual starts to, very slowly, right? I know how it seems, like nothing's really happening, but you know that the more time you put in, right? Remember learning maths or to ride a car? It was so slow, wasn't it? But you surprised yourself how, the more you spent time, the more you got better at driving a car. So the summary of your question is, turn the attention consciously more often to the scriptures, to places like this, to videos, to reading, right? And then little by little, the interest of the material is going to get less, and the interest of the spiritual is going to increase. Okay, so far we have covered 2 lifestyles. Now we want to get to, this is section 2 of chapter 5, 2 spiritual disciplines, sadhana dvayam.
Two.
Two, yeah. Here's the important point. Listen carefully. You have no say in which sadhana to perform. You do not get to choose. As an individual, you do not get to choose which sadhana, which spiritual path to pursue. Is that news? Yeah, that's all we hear in the spiritual world. No, you're on your path, I'm on my, that's your path, I'm on my path. You do not get to say what path you're on, because ignorance cannot tell what is best for it. That's why we have the scriptures. The scripture tells you what path you are to take. So this is a common, I'll talk more about this. This is a common misconception. We think, right, there are several paths to liberation, right? In fact, today we're adding new paths. We're adding Tantra, Kundalini. You wouldn't believe the kind of paths we're adding today, right? A lot of paths. This is not present nor found anywhere in the Gita nor the Vedas. The Vedas, that means including the Upanishads, do not support the view of multiple paths. In other words, there is no choice in sadhana. Understand that? There is no choice in sadhana. The scriptures get to say what sadhana you perform, not you. Okay. So the conclusion is there is only two sadhanas that a person can take. One, Karma Yoga. Two, Jnana Yoga. These are the only two paths for liberation. Question? No?
No, I think that's clarified it already.
But surely aren't we treading both paths?
Huh?
Aren't we treading both paths?
Okay, so the question is, should I do both? Right? Or is there an order?
Well, not should I, we are. We have no choice.
Yeah, we'll describe what they are. We're just giving you a bird's eye view.
But we don't have the choice. They're saying the scriptures are telling us.
The scriptures tell you.
So which one is it?
Huh?
What did they tell us?
So they say, for example, they say if there is a mind that is yet still thinking about the material, still obsessed, still active. Active, active we just talked about householder. Active. That means still obsessed or pursuing the worldly matters. That is, still has passion, still has aspirations, still has things to accomplish, to do. The scriptures say very clearly, pursue Karma Yoga. Why? Because a active lifestyle implies what? An active mind. An active mind implies what? A mind that or whose focus is towards multiple pluralistic phenomena of the world. You understand? And an active mind, which is rajas, is not primed for the requirement of understanding or comprehending knowledge, which is a sattvic mind, a tranquil mind. What's going to happen is, if a person is still active in their thoughts and they hear knowledge, they come to a class like this, Jnana Yoga, what's going to happen is the value won't be heard, and it won't be appreciated, and it won't be especially taken on nor contemplated about. It will be heard, and what's going to happen is they're going to say, how was the class? Yeah, it was just another class. That's what's going to happen. It's seen over and over again. That means if the mind is not primed for Jnana Yoga, then take Karma Yoga. When Karma Yoga has sufficiently purified the mind, only then can the dominance of Jnana Yoga start to take over. Understand? It doesn't mean that there is a straight cut between Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. What I'm saying is, on the beginning, there is a dominance of Karma Yoga. And as the mind slowly starts to purify, then that dominance naturally, without your choosing, your interest starts to get more into the scriptures. This is a natural progress that's observable 10 out of 10 times every single time, where the knowledge starts to get really interesting. And the person starts to read more, starts to appreciate more, starts to contemplate more. Why? Because the mind has turned from, the rajas has been sufficiently removed, and therefore the sattvika mind is available, therefore the appreciation of the knowledge is possible. Okay, do the two go together?
By doing karma yoga, by involving in karma yoga, do you also get jnana yoga?
Which
That
one?
is by through experience of lifestyle, then you get enlightenment. The jnana yoga comes there because of the experience you have in karma yoga.
Oh, the experience of Karma Yoga.
Experiences brings you enlightenment or
Right.
jnana.
Okay. Okay. Karma Yoga is a way to purify the mind, right? Even before meditation, because I know you do meditation, before meditation also, if the mind is not purified and the person starts meditating, what's going to happen? Impossible. They're going to be entertaining thoughts about the world, and they're going to keep coming on and on and on. That means Karma Yoga is even before meditation, which is why Jnana Yoga is chapter 6, Karma Yoga is chapter 3 in the Bhagavad Gita. So that means first Karma Yoga, prepare the mind, still the mind, and then you're ready for Jnana Yoga. And then Jnana Yoga, knowledge, is able to take the person to liberation. That's the order. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga leads to liberation. Once again, Karma Yoga, purify the mind. Why? So that Jnana Yoga will be appreciated, comprehended, understood, practiced, so that will lead to liberation. That's the order. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga leads to liberation.
I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that agree that's correct. But what I'm trying to say is that slowly you can have both together. That's what you say. And once, because it's not a clear cut.
Yeah, it's not clear.
Yeah. So
They overlap.
there is a lapse. So it is. That's what you say. Slowly you can get through karma, through experiences in life. Then you learn, oh, this is the right path. This is the right thing.
Yeah.
You appreciate your jnana better through your experience in life.
Yeah, well, you're experiencing life right now, aren't you? I mean, you're always experiencing life.
Yes.
And with life that you're experiencing, you're also experiencing yourself experiencing life. Right? Who else is experiencing life other than you?
For example, I can give an example here is that for me, I always thought that possession, a job, everything gives security,
Yeah.
to give happiness.
Yeah.
Then what happened is that for the last 3 years I was not employed.
Right.
But I was still happy. So at that moment, then suddenly I realized that actually the possession or the pursuit for this was not necessary for happiness.
Yeah.
So that was through experience of life
Yeah.
that I learned something.
So the freedom of the worldly matters gave you joy.
Sort of. Yeah, I don't need.
Yeah.
I didn't need all that elements
Yeah.
in order to be happy. So that came through.
Yeah. So that was an experience.
Experience. So
Yeah.
that's how the jnana came about.
Yeah, but that's also a matter of lifestyle. I mean, also a person who's working and have fully evolved in their work, they can also be happy just like that. We're talking now lifestyle management, basically. But when it comes to karma yoga colors your lifestyle. Karma yoga is an attitude.
I suppose that's the difference between karma and karma yoga.
Yeah, good point, Martin. So karma yoga is a spiritual sadhana, totally different from karma. Karma is performing an action. Okay, so karma yoga has nothing to do with karma. Are we clear? Yes, it's in the kitchen. Okay. So now let's talk.
So can I just ask, what is the difference then between karma and karma yoga?
We're going to actually talk about karma yoga right now. Karma is object of action. So what is karma yoga? That's what we're going to talk about now. Okay? So get ready to hear what karma yoga is. This is talked about in chapter 5 between verses 7 to 12. What is the essence of karma yoga? Listen. Proper attitude plus proper action. So now two questions come up. What is proper attitude and what is proper action? So action is contained or split into three categories. Now, what are those three categories? Take note of this, because this is going to tell you where or how or what action you should be performing, because this is a gradation. There's a spiritual gradation of what action does. That means the first order, the first action, which we call nishkama karmani or sattvic karmani. Okay, so what do we call the first one? Nishkama or sattvic karmani. This is the best or the highest possible action you can do. There is no higher action than sattvic karmani. So now you're asking, what is sattvic karmani, right? Okay, sattvic karmani or nishkama karmani is selfless action, whereby the beneficiary gets more. Understand? The beneficiary, the one who's on the receiving end, gets more. Why? Because it is a selfless action coming out of whom? Yourself. Therefore, sattvic karmani, there's a word that's giving it away, sattvic, that means it's a sattvic action, is one by the performance of it provides the most spiritual progress, the most mind purification. What do we say about mind purification in part 1? Necessary for what? Jnana Yoga. So now you're asking, what kind of action should I perform that's going to purify the mind in the fastest way possible so that the appreciation of knowledge will be comprehended, understood, which will then lead to what? Liberation. The answer to that is Nishkama Sattvic Karmani. Nishkama or Sattvika Karmani. Okay. So once again, what is Sattvika Karmani? Actions which contribute maximum purity to your spiritual progress. How do you have actions contribute maximum purity to your spiritual progress? By selfless nature. That means once the action is performed, there was no agenda on my part as to why I performed it. This is what we call a mother, for example, who does not necessarily, she of course deserves a thank you, but she just offers 3 meals a day to her children, and she does so many things for her children, and she never even expects a thank you. It's a duty. It's selfless. Sattvika Karmani. So that's the first grade. The second, Sakama or Raga Karmani. Raga, Dveshati, you know what the word Raga means. Attractions. Sakama or Raga Karmani. What is category 2? Category 2 is Raga Karmani, meaning what? Selfish actions, whereby the beneficiary is me or my family. Understand? So the second best action that one can perform is Sakama or Raga Karmani, whereby the actions are performed for the beneficiary of me and my circle of influence, or my friend, or my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. Understand? Me and my family. This is the majority of the world. This is also a good action, but it brings limited spiritual progress. It still brings progress, but it's limited spiritual progress. So right now we can ask a question. What happens if there is a man and a woman and they're very happy together? And one of them hears this and says, you know, since everything is the Lord, right? Everything is Ishvara. Why don't I just serve you? You alone, right? We're just like a little family. And that's it. That's fine. But if it stops there, and the individual who's trying to serve does not take time for themselves, that is still limited spiritual progress. Understand? The point is, you need to reserve time for yourself. It doesn't matter if you're serving the other or the entire world and trying to be good. There needs to be a time reserved for yourself. Clear? So category 2 is Raga Karmani. That means selfish actions. They're still serving someone, but there is an agenda. You're serving your partner, but you're not serving someone else, right? I don't want to serve someone else, I'm serving my partner. So there is an agenda, but it's still serving someone. Whereas the first category, I am serving everyone equally. Why? Because I see everyone as Ishvara, as the Lord. Category 1, selfless. Category 2, selfish. Category 3, tamasa or tamasika karmani. Tamasika. The quality of what? Tamas. Category 3, tamasika karmani, is harmful actions, whereby the beneficiary is only me and the society suffers or gets hurt. A bank robber, for example, he's going to perform a very good action, but the only person who's going to benefit is the bank robber or the thief, but the person on the receiving end is going to get hurt. If not physically, then psychologically or emotionally. Or retaliation, this is a common one, like I'm going to get back for something that someone did for me. It doesn't matter if someone did something bad for me. The point is, it's the Lord. Why would you do something, would you retaliate on the Lord? It's impossible, right? So that means if one's vision is everything is the Lord, everything is Ishvara, then tamasika karmani becomes almost impossible, right? Because if God was standing in front of you and you wanted to retaliate, it would be very hard, wouldn't it?
So what if someone comes to attack you? Do you retaliate?
Yeah, then
That's defense.
then you self-defense.
Yes,
but
so
let's say they take your
But then
money.
you hurt them.
Yeah, let's say they take your money, right? And they did it in a very covert, cunning way. And you know that you can get them back, maybe embarrass them or something. That is your fault, right? Because what's happened has happened. But see, if I now do something, if I retaliate, then what am I doing? What is that? Karma, action. Producing what? Consequences back onto me. That means you cannot get out of karma. You have to stop it yourself. That's why it's easy to fall for this samsara, because if I see, right, let's say someone who's done something bad to me and I need to get back to them, what is that saying? Well, that's first of all requiring my participation, and any participation that is required requires an action, and action has an inevitable consequence in a form of regret, in a form of guilt, and that guilt then I have to deal with myself. But if I forgive them, right, if I forgive them and I recognize they could have not done any better because they're also ignorant, they also don't know any better, so therefore they had no choice but to perform this action, this cruel action onto me. Nobody likes to be evil, nobody is evil by nature, it's just that they're covered in that moment, so they have no choice. That's why we can have, you know, someone who's extremely rude, right, and they're just, let's say they're intoxicated, and they do something that is unacceptable. You think they're doing that intentionally? No, they have no choice. So we have to understand at that moment when that action was performed, that person had no choice. That's called forgiveness. Understanding they could have not done any better because the full clarity wasn't available to them in that moment. But if I retaliate, then what am I doing? What is retaliation? Tamas. I'm adding more tamas onto my own mind, I'm agitating my own mind, and then, what is also retaliation? A lot of rajas. And is it possible to think about the scriptures if I am in a process of thinking of hurting someone?
But in self-defense, you're not intending to hurt someone, you're intending to save yourself.
Oh yes, self-defense we resolved.
Self-defense, you
Self-defense,
could hurt someone.
yeah, yes.
You could hurt someone. So what's that?
No, self-defense, so, okay, just category. So self-defense is acceptable because you're protecting yourself, right?
It's part of that same action as it's happening.
Yeah.
You're talking about a new action.
Yeah, I'm talking about later on when everything's resolved and I've got my own, you know,
that's
tactics.
Pre-planning or planning afterwards is different.
Yeah. So I was talking about planning, not self-defense. Self-defense acceptable, planning not acceptable.
So the intention is all.
The intention of hurting them back, not acceptable. Because it's God, it's the Lord.
It's funny you should be bringing that up now because that's something that I've been contemplating over the last few weeks. How living in the moment, living in the present requires that understanding of action and a cause and effect, and how quick that is to end and start and end and start. It's not a big thing. It's actually it's like, it's hard to explain.
It's a continuity.
Yeah. I mean, it comes right back to what you were saying, is differentiating between where one action finishes and then the new action starts, and you're the new player in the new action.
Yeah.
And you have to make a fresh decision, and this is your karmic, your fresh karmic consequence coming out of that new decision. Yeah. But it's actually when you look at it and you're more closely, it's happening really quickly all the time.
Yeah, because every action is tied with every effect is tied with a cause. There is no cause without the effect, and neither is there effect without the cause. Every cause gives birth to an effect, and the effect is what? Right in it, it's birthed out of a cause, right? So the cause effect has to be consciously stopped. Otherwise, the journey of samsara continues. Okay.
So I'm finding it a bit thin line because, like, if an action happens, something bad happens, and you actually take action by reporting to police or doing another investigation and all, is that something planned or? I mean, you're planning to report and you're planning to sort it out, like getting some action out of it.
But that's correct, actually.
Is there a sattvic response to it?
Is that in any way, when you contemplate on doing all this, is that in any way creating your own tamas on you? Negative pathways?
Did you have something else to say?
Yeah, when you go to the police, because it is like a new action as an effect of the.
But that's an appropriate action.
Yeah, that's an appropriate. It's a sattvic action. Yeah.
Okay.
So
because see, if you don't do something, right, they're going to continue. This is exactly
why.
Well,
you could pay $6,000 to a hitman to go and kill him.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, which is the appropriate action?
See, this is exactly what happened in Kurukshetra, because if Arjuna ran away, he wanted to be a sannyasi, right? He didn't want to fight Duryodhana. Then who's going to protect the society? Because Duryodhana was collapsing the morals of the society. So that means Arjuna was applying, you could say, a sattvic action in order to what? Preserve the morals of dharma. So that means the same with the police. Why does the police exist? To preserve the dharma of the society. Any society, if you see, that is corrupt or has been corrupt at any one point of time, has been as a result of a generally corrupt police force. I know this happened, I'm from South Africa, and I lived there for 9 years. In 1993, when the ANC, African National Congress, took over from J.C. Kruger, I think, he was the white president, and then Mandela came, and then the ANC became the dominant party, right? What happened is the white police force were all fired, every single one of them, because now it was a black president. And what happened to the GDP of South Africa, to the currency? You can see from 1993 all the way till today, it just plummeted totally. And there was a lot of corruption in the country. Why? Because the police, the workforce, were what? Corrupt themselves. They were untrained. They didn't get proper training. In other words, there was still this, oh, we're black, now we have the power. So that means society collapses when the preserver of dharma collapses. So that means you should be thanking the police force. Because usually we have these funny things about the police, but they're actually just there protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. You don't expect everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
Just aim for good.
That's right. Aim for good. To the best you can in that moment. Yeah. Because see,
I think it depends on your attachment. You want to go to the police and you're attached to the results, then it's probably the second one.
Yeah.
But if you're not attached, but you want to go and do just report it so that these things are not repeated again. So you're not attached to the result, then probably just moving the flow of things.
Yeah.
Then probably it's the first. So I think it's all.
I mean, things always need to be improved. I mean, the police force definitely can be improved in the way they do things and the way they react to stuff, of course. But what is there right now is what is there right now, and you just use the appropriate action within that and try and improve everything as you go.
Yeah.
Getting justice.
Huh?
Getting justice is the outcome.
Getting justice. That's a tamasic.
That is tamasic. It sounds tamasic, but isn't that why we report? Getting justice.
Well, it's to bring that person. But it's to bring that person to justice. It's also to stop them, seize them from incurring further damage to the society. So yes, they need to have, to be caught.
And what's the definition of justice in your idea of justice there? Is it revenge and that the perpetrator should be suffering?
It depends on your intention.
That should be recompensed or the person should be removed from society? I mean, where do you actually define justice?
Okay.
Sorry, we're probably getting off track.
Okay, so let's summarize. Okay, so we talked about karma yoga. Essence is proper action. We talked about 3 types of action: sattvika, karmani, raga karmani, and tamasika karmani. One is selfless, the second is selfish, me and my family, and the last one is only me, but everyone else suffers. Okay? Now, let's move on to the right side and we talk about proper attitude. What does it mean to say proper attitude in the context of karma yoga? It means to say that all actions I do are given or offloaded or devoted to the Lord. Why? Because everything is the Lord, the creator of the universe. So in other words, it's recognizing that everything I do, right? Every action I do is given to whom? end of the day? To the Lord. Generations of societies have come and gone. Empires have been born and have died. Kings have given birth to empires or kingdoms, and the kingdoms have destroyed. What remains? Jagat, the world. So therefore, everything comes and goes, but what remains is that eternal principle, Ishvara. So therefore, every action we do is for the Lord. Because one day, no matter how much I have accumulated, you have accumulated, all of that's going to be forgotten. No one's going to even know who you were as a person. And the world's going to keep going like it always has for eternity. And the only thing that remains is Ishvara and you as Atman, consciousness. So therefore, we start to see everything as the Lord. That's the proper attitude of Karma Yoga. Dedicating all actions to the Lord alone. Not to my wife, to my children, to my dad, to my mom, to the Lord. Because everything is Ishvara. You understand? If I see that I'm dedicating my actions to the form, then my vision is limited to the form alone at the expense of ignoring or neglecting the whole picture, which is Ishvara. That means you can still devote all you want to your whoever it is, but there is an added bonus of mind purification, because that is the purpose of Karma Yoga, to purify the mind. What do we say about purifying the mind? The purpose? To lead us to the recognition, understanding, comprehension of Jnana Yoga, which leads to liberation. There's actually a beautiful story where did this happen? So a man went to the Ganga river, to the Ganges, right? And he wanted to take a bath in the river to be refreshed and to be energized. It's quite energizing if you've been in the Ganga river. And, right, so he got into the river and he got out and he felt great, right? He got energized. He got cleaned, physically cleaned. The second man also went to the Ganga river, but his intention was, the Ganga is, what's the symbol of the Ganga, if you know? The highest truth. That which is the highest truth. Therefore, I am devoting this act, this action, Sattvika Karmani, to the Lord. And guess what happened? Not only did he clean his body physically, also felt energized physically, but also got out spiritually fulfilled. So therefore, Krishna says, why be selfish and get less when you can be selfless and get more? The second man who came with an intention of devoting this action to the Lord not only got the job done of the first man, but also got out spiritually purified and fulfilled. Why be selfish and get less when you can be selfless, that is, dedicate all your actions to the Lord and get more anyway?
So any action, Sattvika Kamani, can be any action.
Any action. Yes. As long as you're seeing that I'm doing this for the Lord, that itself purifies the mind.
The intention is there too.
Yeah. Because think about it this way. If I am devoting my actions to the Lord, what am I doing? I am saying that the Lord is more important than my own ego, than my own raga, dvesha, my likes and dislikes. You see the logic there? But what do we do in the world? We apply actions for the sake of gaining for myself. But like this, the second man, I'm applying actions because my focus is on the Lord, and your focus can only be in one place at any one time, right? You can't have focus on two things at one time. You can't have two thoughts at one time. You can only have one thought at a time. My focus is on the Lord in that moment, and in that moment it is not on this sense of doer, enjoyer, called the ahamkara, the ego. Therefore, as you said, the question you asked at the beginning, how do we move more towards the knowledge? That was the question. The answer is by instigating or including actions which are devoting to the Lord. Why? Because every time I do that, it's like minusing the ego, smaller, and increasing the reverence and the love for the Lord, which doesn't exclude anyone. Why? Because everything is the Lord. See the logic? So the logic is, if I do it just for myself, I will get exactly what I want. If I do it as a selfless sattvika karmani, then not only will I get what I want, but I will get so much more. So it works anyway.
It's funny how the gross world, the mundane world around us, comes up with little symbols and things which get taken on by the rest of society. But it's actually got a much more profound meaning. That thing about attitude, the last few years, last sort of 20 years, I guess, that whole thing about, he's got attitude, that kind of thing. Well, it's true, it's fundamental, that's what it is, but they've got it wrong in terms of what they mean by attitude.
What do they mean?
Yeah. It is all about attitude.
Yeah, it is that because so that's a good point.
Yeah.
So what comes first, action or attitude?
It's got to be attitude.
Yeah, because attitude determines the action. So therefore, the action is only a reflection of the attitude that one has understood prior. That's why we need knowledge. Because without knowledge, how are you going to gain the attitude?
And you can cultivate attitude more easily in some cases, which then refines the action.
Okay. So so here's the next part. So now, how do we live this? I'm going to bring this question again. Here's the point. Whatever consequences happen from the results of your actions, take that as what we call prasada buddhi. That means being grateful that whatever I got is indeed only Ishvara. You understand? Even if there is a disease, let's say you're extremely good, a good person, and you do all the right things, but there is a disease that suddenly happens or occurs. Vivekananda, for example, he was, if you know him, from Ramakrishna, he died at 37 or 38. He had constant disease, like insomnia. I think he also got a form of cancer. And he did so much good work, right, to spread to America the Vedic wisdom. Still, take that as what we call prasada buddhi, because your prarabdha karma, listen carefully, your prarabdha karma, that is the karma that is running right now for today, cannot be stopped. It only stops when you physically die. So that is why every day you have a different day. Isn't that true? Sometimes you just wake up like everything's fine. Yesterday the weather wasn't so good, but you woke up perfectly great. You're feeling really good. Today everything's great environmentally, right? Sunny day. Oh my God, it couldn't be better. And yet the person wakes up quite, what's the word? Soggy?
Under the weather.
Like why? Like what happened? That's what we call your prarabdha karma has been assigned for today. And where is prarabdha karma coming from? Sanchita karma. Sanchita karma is all of the karmas, all of the things yet to happen. So every day, a little bit of that sanchita gets reserved for just today, and it gets played out. And when you say, I'm going to go to sleep now, or when you start to feel tired, you know what that is? That is when the prarabdha karma has finished for today. Until you wake up tomorrow. That's why you wake up. Because there is more prarabdha karma to be played out. And the day you die is when all of the prarabdha karma has been finalized for this life. So because every experience is a result of your action, whether in the past or in the present, for that reason alone, we need to look at the consequences or the results of our actions as prasada buddhi. This means the attitude is, whatever I get, I deserve. The ego doesn't like to hear this. Yes.
Yeah, so like back to her question. Somebody robbed you.
Someone?
Somebody robbed you. Somebody had robbed you. So it comes. Can you also say that as a prasada bhukti? You deserve to carry?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, that happened to me. I was like, oh my God, I feel great. Like, thanks. Because if this didn't happen, it might as well just happen now than later, right? Because that is my prarabdha karma that's running. Therefore, I got robbed. So I need to accept that and thank you, Lord. I don't know why I got robbed. I surely don't deserve it, but I did get robbed. And since I don't know the totality of all the variables which determine the field, I don't know that. All I can do is just accept it as prasada, buddhi, or grace. Thank you, Lord. It definitely is not nice what happened, but nevertheless, I am appreciative that it has happened because it's now taught me how to forgive. Therefore, the affirmation changes, listen, from how can I get back to Lord, please give me the strength to learn from this lesson so that I may spiritually grow and evolve as a full human being. So the affirmation changes from that tamasika of retaliation to prasada buddhi, which would be something with, thank you, Lord, I don't know why this happened, but please give me the strength to recognize that there is a lesson in this that I may draw and help me to be a better human being for you, because everything is you. Okay. So that means we never say, why me? Right? Because if you say, why me?
It's just egocentric.
You're making Bhagavan wrong. Because, see, everything is Bhagavan, the Lord. So if you say, why me? What he's saying? That you're right and the Lord is wrong. So instead of why me, yes, it was me. Thank you. Please give me the strength to learn what I need to learn so that I may become a better human being and serve you in the best way possible. It always goes back to that prasada, buddhi. That's the message. Reverence and gratitude to the Lord. Why? Because every time I apply prasada buddhi, it purifies the mind. Every time I apply tamasika karmani, it instills more dark cloud over the mind, making it even harder to understand the truth, moving me even farther away from what I really want, which is freedom from the limitation of the body, the mind, the thoughts. So there is no choice. You see the logic? There is no choice but to apply prasada buddhi in everything.
You stop your suffering there and then.
Yeah. So it's your choice. Okay. So what's the result of, now we tell you the why, right? This is a new topic now. What's the result of karma yoga? What's the benefit of karma yoga?
Acceptance.
Accept. And what does acceptance do?
Purify the mind.
Purify the mind. And why do we want to purify the mind?
To be able to understand and learn the scripture.
And why do we need to understand?
Liberation.
Yeah, liberation. So there's a direct... See how great Ishwara is? There's no cheating. You can't cheat the system here. It's offered right on a silver platter. The instruction is provided in the Gita. It works. We know it works. It has been working for thousands of years. Apply it, and the result is guaranteed. It's simple as that. That's what chapter 5 is telling us. It's summarizing the instruction given by Bhagavad Gita, how to understand that Sarvam Brahmaha, I am the whole. Okay. The conclusion is, everyone must purify the mind. It's different action for a grihastha ashrama and a different action of sannyasi ashrama. but nevertheless, despite the difference of the action, purify the mind. That's the message. How? Prasada buddhi. Okay. How are we?
I struggle with a lot of the names, and the terminology.
Yeah.
I'm just...
Oh, the Sanskrit words. Huh?
Yeah, the Sanskrit words. Even though you repeat them many times, I feel like it's still slipping away.
Do you have a pen and paper?
Well, it's hard because we don't have, in English, we don't have a lot to encapsulate those concepts. We don't have English words.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good point. See, in Vedanta, no matter what class you go, if you don't hear Sanskrit words, the teacher is not admiring the tradition. We will say Sanskrit words because we have to. Why? Because there's the equivalent in English is simply lacking, and it's also respecting the tradition. We're not Neo-Advaita. Neo-Advaita don't say this stuff. This is Vedanta, and Vedanta is Sanskrit usage. Yeah. So one way to do this is just to start writing down, right? Just when I say it, write it down, and write down the definition.
But I think the good thing is and the way you do it is great, because there's a repetitiveness that sort of cycles round through the different sessions, and you get a slightly different angle on those words each time. It starts to form the idea, what the word means.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to get it. Rather than trying to do a direct translation into English and try and make it out that way.
Okay. Okay, Jnana Yoga, verse 13 to 21. So now we have finished Karma Yoga, right? Now we're going to focus on Jnana Yoga, knowledge. Verses 13 to 21, chapter 5. There's a misconception about Jnana Yoga, and that misconception says that knowledge part is dry. This is a dry part. This is too intellectual. So in order to not make it dry, we need to go into Bhakti Yoga. That's a common misconception. That's not true. Right? So Jnana Yoga cannot be skipped because we just said there's only two sadhanas which lead to liberation, which is Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Therefore, there is no skipping, no matter how much the tendencies wish to do so. Okay, so what is Jnana Yoga? What is Jnana Yoga? Sadhana of Jnana Yoga is Shravana, here's the terminology, Manana and Nididhyasana. Shravana, we discussed. Manana, we also talked about. Nididhyasana, contemplating on the knowledge. I'm not going to get into it now because it's in the videos. So, but as a brief, Vedanta is inputting the knowledge through the means of listening. That's how we learn anything, by listening. Manana is removing the doubts about the nature of the I in the light of what we have listened in Shravana. And Nididhyasana is meditating or contemplating on this knowledge to fully assimilate it until it is firmly established. So, summary, Shravana, attention, listening, right? Listening. You're just listening and you're putting aside your existing beliefs and being open to what's being received. If we don't put aside to what we've already learned, then no matter what I say, who says it, it's not going to go in. Right? Because there's distrust. Right? So that means there has to be that shraddha, that means that sense of faith in what we're hearing. Once we have listened and we have acquired sufficient knowledge, then we, through that knowledge being acquired in Shravana, we can start to remove doubts in relation to who am I and who am I not. Right? Viveka, discrimination. Atma, Anatma, Viveka. So that means stage 2, Manana, is removing doubts. This is your job. And also the job of a teacher. That's why questions are welcome. When you ask a question, that's when it's most helpful. And nididhyasana is contemplating on this knowledge. Okay? Contemplation. Now, what is Jnana Yoga? This is a very concise definition. Listen carefully what knowledge or Jnana Yoga is. Systematic and consistent study of spiritual scriptures for a length of time by a qualified acharya or teacher. I'll say that again. Systematic. What does systematic mean? There's an order to it. There's no skipping. There's no first Jnana Yoga because it's definitely more juicy and attractive than Karma Yoga. There is no skipping. It's systematic, orderly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a step by step. Systematic and consistent, which means it's not once a week or once a month. It is consistent, sadhana. Because if it's not consistent, guess what? Life is consistent, and life is anything other than that which points to the self. It is what? Worldly affairs, right? Attending to the world. That's why consistency is required. Because the mind is always attracted to the world. If it's not attracted to the scriptures, it's attracted to the world. It's common sense. Systematic and consistent study of the spiritual scriptures for a length of time, that means there's no stopping. Once you're in, there's no going out, by a qualified acharya or a teacher. If they're not qualified, then it's very hard to get it. Right? And it's very hard to teach if the teacher is not qualified. Because then when it comes to the self, when it comes to Brahman, when it comes to understanding the nature, explaining the nature of the I, then the teacher is going to trip up. And that's going to be obvious. Right? So the teacher also has to be very sharp. Okay. So therefore it is actually better, just a little tip, to listen to one teacher. Why? Not that other teachers are not good, right? Because every teacher has a certain terminology and way of teaching. So that means if I start mixing up, then one teacher is saying exactly the same as another, but they're saying it in a different way, and it ends up confusing. That's why I first learned with James and then with Nima. But together, it's very confusing. Okay. What does Vedantic scriptures mean? One little note. It does not mean dharmic scriptures. Like Ramayana is a dharma scripture. Ramayana talks about how to live in accordance with dharma, how to be a good person. Vedanta, when I say Vedantic scriptures, I'm talking about the Upanishads, Vedanta. Antaha, is not at the end, by the way. Antaha, like we say antakarana, antaha karana, that is a subtle body. Right? So antaha karana is a subtle body. But now when I say Vedanta, that same word is in Vedanta, antaha, is within. Within where? Everywhere. That means the Upanishads are spread throughout the Vedas. That's why we say Vedanta. That means the knowledge of the culmination of the Vedas is contained throughout the 4 Vedas. Not at the end, but throughout. Why? Because if it was at the end, then how many of us finish a book? Very few of us, right? That's why it is placed all... I think the Kena Upanishad is in the middle of one of the Vedas. Okay, so Vedanta scriptures means specifically Upanishads, or the Bhagavad Gita also qualifies for the Upanishads. What are the Upanishads? The highest philosophical texts in existence. Okay, what's the benefit of recognition of Atma, right? Because all of this leads us to Atma. When I say all this, I mean Karma Yoga, purifying the mind, leading to what? Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga does what? Lead to liberation. What's the benefit of this liberation? In other words, the question is, what is the benefit of recognition of Atma?
True identity.
You get to know you're real. true nature. The search stops. There's a relief, right? There's a sense of general contentment. We call it cheerfulness. We don't use the words like bliss, by the way. I'm very careful with the words. I just use cheerfulness, like a general cheerfulness. Not kind of like, crazy cheerfulness like we imagine. Just a general cheerfulness in everything. No matter what happens. The house burns down, so what? It's just, it's the Lord. It's prasada buddhi. Right? Lose the money, prasada buddhi. So then we ask, what is Atma? Atma is the nature of consciousness, and a common phrase or common popular, here comes the Sanskrit, Chaitanya Swarupaha Atma. In other words, Chaitanya, consciousness, Swarupaha, nature, Atma. That means Atma, the nature of Atma is Chaitanya. And what is Atma? Who you are. So now we ask the question, right? Because we use the word consciousness, so now the question comes up, what is consciousness? So now we're going to answer that. Consciousness is not a part, product, or property of a body. Consciousness is not limited to your body. It is all-pervasive, and being like space, it is free from action. Now this is where we stopped last year. I am not a doer. This is what we're going to continue next week. How is it that I am not a doer? So I'm going to give you a little closure now. Think like space. Consciousness is like space. What does this mean? In space, everything happens, right? In this room, which is space, actions happen. But space itself is not affected. Is space affected when you sit down in your chair? Does space suddenly move away to accommodate your body? I mean, even in quantum physics, we say that everything is space. But if you look through your body, you just see nothing but space. So space is completely unaffected by the objects present within. Similarly, the self is unaffected. When I say the self, I mean Atma, is unaffected by the actions which are done by the individual, we call it the jiva. That's why there is no such thing as sin. Because you're not the one performing the actions. This we will cover next week. Who is it the one that is actually performing these actions? Okay? So that means summary. Consciousness is like space, and yet it accommodates the objects in space, but it is free from what it accommodates. Consciousness accommodates the world, the bodies, the thoughts, the emotions, and yet it is free from what it accommodates. Just like space accommodates these bodies, these thoughts, and yet no matter what happens in this room, this space is unaffected. We bring a sound, the sound is only possible because of the silence. We bring a body, the body is only able to fit in this room because of the space provided to accommodate this body. Similarly, consciousness is that which accommodates the entire creation.
So is that Brahma accommodating his own Ishvara?
Yeah. Brahman and Ishvara are one. Yeah. Just like so you said Brahman accommodating Ishvara.
His own Ishvara. Himself.
Yeah, but see now there's a...
Or manifesting through
Yeah,
Ishvara.
Brahman you could say is the causeless cause of Ishvara. Yeah. But it's not separate. Ishvara and Brahman are not separate.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like the clay in the pot. Is the form, the pot, apart from the clay? right? If there's no clay, is there a pot?
It's the no thing and the something, but there's both things.
Yeah, but that no thing, that clay, is free from something.
Yeah.
See, if that pot, right, takes on the shape of something that is harmful, does that affect the clay?
No.
No. So that means wherever there is clay, that's exactly where there is form. Wherever there is consciousness, that's exactly where there is what? Mithya. They are inseparable. So what is this about? Discriminating Atma Satya from Anatma Mithya. And having that clear vision of thus who am I and who I am not. I am not that which is the form. I am not that which is constantly, in the process of changing. I am that which is the witness, sakshi, to the changes.
So the good and bad is also not inseparable.
The good and bad?
Yeah, the good and bad has to happen both.
Yeah.
If not, the world doesn't exist that way.
Yeah, the good and bad are...
That's
Okay.
really no different.
So where does good and bad come from? Is that the question?
Action, but it's got to have one bad to have a good, or to understand the good. Bad.
Yeah, okay, okay. We can say that, although, let's not even label it good or bad, right? Because...
It's just a subjective. It's a subjective.
Yeah, it's just an apparent change, right? And then we define it based on our own samskaras, based on our own tendencies as to whether it's good or bad. So it's just change, it's modifying. Vikaraha, it's modification. Okay, so just one more example. So just like the light is shining, the one light is shining on so many objects here, no matter what these objects, what kind of sin, right, is performed, is the light that is illumining the objects, is that light affected? No. So we are now talking about two orders of reality of the one same existence. Two orders of reality, Satya, Mithya, of the one same existence called Brahman. Thus, whatever happens in this room, in this world, this is just a mini world, is or does not affect the light, the illumining light, because of which, or in whose presence, all actions, including papa karma and punya karma. Papa means, what does papa mean? Okay, bad karma, and punya karma, good karma, is free from both papa karma, punya karma, and the three karmas of sanchita, which is all of the karmas that are yet to fructify, prarabdha, what is happening right now, and agami, what is yet to come. The self is free of all of that. Just like the light that's shining is free of whatever happens in this room. Whatever it illuminates, it could illuminate a war in this room, the light doesn't get affected. It could illuminate the most precious, saintful, divine reverential experiences in this room. The light is completely unaffected, and you are that light. So this is about re-identifying with the light and not the actions to which the light is illumining. That's what we are interested in and what this journey is, what Vedanta is. Okay, so over time. So next week we will cover stages of Jnana Yoga. There's 2 stages. And the benefit of following these 2 sadhanas. So once again, next week we will cover the 2 stages of Jnana Yoga, the benefit of following Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, and then we will inquire, using the whiteboard, how is it that I am not the doer? Because this is an essential teaching in order to free oneself from the sense of the body and the mind. Okay, so that's what we're doing next week.
Can I ask about the other plan for next week? We were going to do some homework.
Oh yeah, next week we've got. Yeah, you revealed.
I wasn't going to ask that.
We've got a presentation, two parts. You want to present on the chair. You can present.
Do you still want to do that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Guys, I would have remembered anyway. What is Dharma and the difference and how to live Satya and Mithya, how to integrate it into life. Yeah?
Distinction between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, no, see, I'm doing this because I want to get you involved. See, when you start presenting, sometimes it's a lot more beneficial than just listening. Right? Believe me, I know. So I'm making you do things for your own benefit.
Sorry, I missed it. Maybe I wasn't here in the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, do you know the website? Yes, Vedanta.
Yeah, I know.
And it's number 30, course number 30 at the end.
Yeah.
It's going to have yes work, homework, yes work. And what's the question? How to live Dharma?
What is Dharma?
No, how do you live Dharma?
How do you live it?
How do you live Dharma?
How do you apply it, right?
Yeah.
And the second one, what's the difference between Satya and...
Satya and Mithya.
Satya and Mithya.
Yeah, and what does that mean?
You elaborate a little bit about how
yeah,
to
living
offer
it, like in real life.
Yeah. So it's in the video
Yeah.
that he has over here.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi.
Can you go beyond consciousness?
No, because see, that's a good question, because if you go beyond consciousness, how would you know that you went beyond consciousness? Because you're conscious of the fact that you went beyond consciousness. Therefore, consciousness was with you even though you went beyond consciousness. Therefore, nothing can go beyond consciousness. Why? Because consciousness is your awareness.
There is a realm called superconscious, which I've heard of.
Yeah, we don't use this these words. You know, I know. This super. You got.
Yeah. Because you got your subconscious.
Yeah, subconscious, super consciousness,
And
the creative consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll give you an example. To get a little bit more. Okay, here's a little experiment. If I say to you, go right now to the end of space. Now, don't philosophize where end of space is. Just end of space, right? In the farthest reaches, and there is nothing there. There's nothing there, right? Is that true? I'm going to say this again. Listen to the language. It's a tricky one. If you go to the farthest reaches of space, and there is nothing there, is that true or false?
False.
Why?
Because you can't go to the end of space.
It's false because you are there.
You are there.
You're there.
It's all pervasive.
Do you get that? It's false because I say there's nothing there, and I say, is that true or false? It's got to be false because you're there. That's how you're able to tell that there's nothing there, because you're there. So the answer is, can you go beyond consciousness? No, because if you go beyond consciousness, you're still there to say that you went beyond consciousness.
The Buddhists talk about nothingness. That could be something different. Be my understanding. I don't know. But you know when they talk about nothingness?
You talk about emptiness or no thing or no thingness.
Yeah.
See, no thing and emptiness is two different things.
Yeah, but see, it's the same question. Like, you know, we have a common thing with Buddhists. It's just like a joke. You know, I say there's nothingness. The Vedanta simply diffuses that by saying, well, who's the knower of the nothingness? Right? There still has to be something to qualify and to validate that there's nothingness, which is consciousness.
What's unclear to me is that consciousness, my inheritance, if you like, what the word consciousness means, is all about the mind.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I learned about unconscious as a kid. That person's unconscious and, you know, wake up, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So when I go into the idea of awareness, existence, self,
Yeah.
I really can't get in, I can't really conceive of that without mind. I have to have a mind to have acknowledgement of, I don't know, to understand, what's anything.
Yeah.
So this self is all encompassing and incorporates mind or anything else.
Yeah.
But as a person, I'm going, well, how do I access awareness, it's got to be through my mind.
Yeah.
So that is an ongoing dialogue that I'm having about trying to...
So the question is, how do I access awareness?
I am awareness,
Yeah.
right? I have awareness. Hey,
Yeah.
I can't say I am awareness.
Yeah.
That's not, doesn't feel real for me. I have awareness.
Yeah.
I still am my
Oh,
body.
okay, so that's a genuine statement for you. I have awareness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's an I who has owns something, and that ownership is object of awareness. Because now to have something, right, you have to objectify it, right? But how did you even say I have awareness?
Who's the I?
Yeah. How did you even say I have awareness? If you don't have awareness, right, then how could you say I don't have awareness? If you don't have awareness, how could you say...
Hang on, I'm saying I have awareness.
Yeah.
You know?
But if I say to you, or if you say to me, I don't have awareness right now, how can you say that unless you have awareness to say that?
Yeah. No, I'm not sure that I said I don't have awareness. It's that I have awareness.
Yeah.
That's okay. But that's only through, my understanding is only through my mind.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I mean, that's why, this takes a long time.
Yeah.
Little by little.
Yeah.
It's not overnight.
Yeah.
That's why just sitting and watching, getting into that feeling of watching the thoughts, that might...
The watching of the thoughts is awareness.
Well, I guess that...
But that's the I, because you keep saying I have awareness. Well, what's the I?
If you're objectifying the thoughts, then I guess you get into a habit of separating.
Yeah, it's a good point, because at the beginning there's that separating. There's me, the witness, and the object which is being witnessed. Right? That's still duality, but it's preliminary requirement for knowing that everything's one without having to use the mind to know it.
So what I understand is, if I'm meditating, or even if I'm not, and I'm aware of my thoughts, that is awareness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that awareness is you.
That's a reflected awareness under the model we have here.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's still awareness.
Okay.
Because reflected awareness is that awareness which is operating through your panchakosha, your three bodies or your 5 sheets.
Okay.
Right? So it doesn't matter that it's reflected. It's still awareness. So you're just claiming that I am indeed that awareness, irrespective of whether it's reflected or not.
Okay.
So for example, I'll give you an example since we're on the topic, right? Imagine you're the moon, right? The moon's what? Your body, your mind. Now the moon has different contents. It depends on your life. What you know, what you don't know. That's the moon. So right now you're the moon. Right, Gareth? You're the moon. The original light, right, is the sun. Is Brahman. I'm using dualistic language because now there's a moon and a sun. But as a preliminary, there's a sun. The sun light is pure, isn't it? Because that's all it's doing. It's just shining the light. Agree so far? Yeah. So the sunlight is just pure. When it hits or reflects on the moon, do we still have that light on the moon? Yeah. Otherwise, how would you see the moon at night, right? Because you see the light. Where's the light coming from? From the sun. But along with the light, right, from the sun, there is what? It's, quote, mixed with what? The contents of the moon. Yeah. So now not only is there original light of the sun, but now it's also mixed with matter, which is mithya, which is why we have a hard time discerning who am I? Because you're always aware, that means you are that light, but that light is also mixed with what? Matter, which we call the body, mind, intellect, and then we go, I don't think I've got it. But you can't even say that unless the light, which you are illuminating your own contents of your own mind.
So my understanding is that when there's a purity of awareness, the question itself drops away.
The purity of the mind, not awareness. Because the sunlight is pure.
Yeah, it is pure.
Right. So it's always pure.
When we identify with that awareness, the question of accessing awareness drops away.
That's good. Very good. Yeah.
Right awareness.
Because see, to identify, to try to access awareness, it's a very dangerous language. It implies it's not here right now. And therefore I need to go into some different realm. This is where the experiential notion of enlightenment comes in. Warning. I need to access awareness by going to, let's say, a samadhi. And only by accessing it, I will access myself. When in fact, you're always what? You're always just aware.
Okay, so is the absence of perception or thought
Is also illumined by your awareness, by you.
okay, so is that, I can't say experience or awareness, but that is a less compromised form of awareness.
Experience is banned in the class.
Okay.
What do you mean by that? Experience is banned.
Experience, I'm going to be very careful on the word, my words, because, when I say experience Brahman,
Yeah.
right, what does immediately everyone have? I am experiencing Brahman.
At a moment, a special moment.
There's an I who is experiencing
Right.
something else. That's a dualistic thought. So that means we say, very careful with the language, I and Ishvara enjoy the same reality, which is Brahman. Versus I am experiencing Brahman. This is very deceptional language.
So the key phrase I keep coming back to is you are that.
You are that, yeah.
So there's no mucking around. You are that now.
Yeah, you are that right now, yeah. Or you can just, or the final statement, aham brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Which is true, you already are. Otherwise you wouldn't be aware of this entire class. So there is an aspect of coming to accept that you already are that. Right? It's not just, because see, here's the danger of thinking experience-wise. If I say I'm going to experience Brahman, what does that imply? Time. That means consciousness is going to begin, and therefore consciousness is not here right now. Therefore I am limiting Brahman, which is all-pervasive, omnipotent, omniscient, to what? Time-based phenomena. Therefore I am once again making that fundamental mistake and denying my nature as eternal by saying I'm going to experience. That's why you're experiencing it right now. How? As your awareness, because of which you're able to recognize these words. And if I start to think that I'm going to experience it after hearing 20 more classes, that is a fundamental mistake being made right now. And to correct that, I say that is not going to happen because you already are that right now. So we cannot limit Brahman to time or experience, because that implies beginning, and what begins ends. That's just common logic.
So is it incorrect to say awareness precedes thought?
Yeah.
It is.
Just go back to what we talked last year about the 5 koshas, you know, where you've got the body as the physical layer is the last one, then you've got the mental and emotional layer, and the self, the awareness, the Brahma is
illumines the 5.
Is veiled by these other aspects.
Yeah.
I find that very helpful.
Yeah, apparently veiled. Yeah, not actually veiled, apparently veiled. Yeah. Just like, you know, the sun.
Yeah. But it permeates. It gets permeated by.
I guess to make that knowledge firm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Making that knowledge firm is what this is about.
Yeah.
But anyway, the way I think is, I need a strategy, man. I need practices, processes that will allow me to realise that without trying, right? Just am that. Okay. So that's where I leave it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we just made a few corrections, so now you can start to change your thoughts.
Yeah. So that there's no strategy, there's no action,
there's no strategy, because that's once again going back to time and space, beginning and end. What begins will end.
And that's not to be confused with Karma Yoga, which is
okay, what is it?
Process to purify your mind by not identifying with the action or not having expectation of the outcome.
Yeah, yeah.
So not being attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
So it's apparently dualistic, but it isn't.
Be conscious of the action.
Yeah, so Karma Yoga is...
I'm talking about maintaining the sense of the I, and then you have a strategy, what I call a strategy, Karma Yoga.
Yeah.
It's apparently dualistic, but it's not.
Hey, you guys are free to go, by the way. This is just that conversation we're having random.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so karma yoga is going to help one to assimilate firmly the knowledge that I am the self.
Without trying to.
Without trying, yeah. Without the need to try.
Yes.